Elon, shifting gears to the economy, we saw this surprise report of negative 1.4% GDP growth in Q1. Interest rates have been rising. That increased the cost to the consumer of getting loans, things like that. We've had a stock market correction, really a crash in a lot of growth stocks, software stocks. From where you sit and the data that you see, where do you think the economy is headed right now? Do you think we're in a recession, or is it just a risk? How do you assess our current economic situation?
Well, predicting macroeconomics is always difficult, and one should assign probabilities to these things. But ironically, I did last year. People asked me what I think about the economy. I said, well, I think we might enter a recession in approximately spring of 2022.
Called it, nailed it.
Now the thing is that recessions are not necessarily a bad thing. I've now been through a few of them, and what tends to happen is if you have a boom that goes on for too long, you get misallocation of capital. It starts raining money on fools, basically. It's like any dumb thing gets money, and I'm sure you've seen a few of those. So at some point, it gets just out of control, and you just have a misallocation of human capital, where people are doing things that are silly and not useful to their fellow human beings. And then those companies, there needs to be sort of an economic enema, if you will, to have everyone sort of shift uncomfortably in their seats. But
I'm sorry, it's just I'm visualizing it. The economic enema.
Listen, it's got alliteration.
This too shall pass.
This too shall pass. Eventually, the economic enema does its job. It clears out the pipes, if you will.
Yes.
and sort of the bullshit companies go bankrupt, and the ones that are doing useful products are prosperous. But there's certainly a lesson here that if one is making useful product and has a company that makes sense, make sure you're not running things too close to the edge from a capital standpoint. That you've got some capital reserves to last through irrational times. Because in the past, when there's been a recession, it has gone. It's amazing. It's flipped like a light switch. I mean, David, do you remember this from the PayPal, ex-PayPal days, when we raised $100 million in March of 2000. And we had the demand was so high, we had people like VCs like just literally without even a term sheet wiring money into our account.
We'll send the term sheet later.
they literally would like sleuth out our bank account number and wire money in, and we're like, where'd this come from? And it's like, so it was like there was literally fire hosing money in March of 2000. And then in April 2000, the market went into free fall, and it went from raising money was trivial to even good companies could not raise money in a month. So it's just important to bear in mind, like that. PayPal almost went bankrupt in 2000. We came close, but thankfully we'd raised that $100 million in March 2000, without which we would be in game over, basically. And we kind of saw it coming. So it's like we got the X-Confinity merger done in like 3 weeks and raised $100 million because we were like, we see this coming to an end pretty soon. And then a month later, it was like, a nightmare, basically. Anyway, so it's just important to make sure if you're a healthy company, you've got some capital to get through things. And then what's your costs? And if it is a recession, which more likely than not, it is a recession. I'm not saying it is, but it probably is. Then just watch your cash flow and get to positive cash flow as soon as you can. But I think we probably are in a recession, and that recession will get worse. But these things pass, and then there will be boom times again. So it'll probably be some tough going for, I don't know, a year, maybe 12 to 18 months is usually the amount of time that it takes for a correction to happen. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Hey, David, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it started, what started as a slowdown earlier this year now seems like, I mean, technically, I guess we need 2 quarters of negative growth to be in a recession, but it feels like we're in one. It feels like it started. The growth stock, the software businesses that we invest in are sort of the canaries in the coal mine. And there's a lot of dead canaries. Maybe not dead, but
They're having a hard time breathing.
yeah.
I'm not dead yet.
It's not dead. It's just napping. It's
napping. Wake up, little birdie.
Wake up.
We made
Fly.
It's just fly.
It's just stunned. It got stunned for a brief moment, and it'll be fine.
Elon, did you see Jeff's Bezos's tweet back and forth with Biden, where Biden, I think, was talking about inflation, but then he correlated that to taxing corporations, and Bezos said this is misinformation and disinformation, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think about that whole exchange then back and forth?
I mean, the obvious reason for inflation is that the government printed a zillion amount of more money than it had, obviously. So it's like the government can't just have issue checks far in excess of revenue without there being inflation. Velocity of money held constant. So unless there's something would change with velocity of money, but it's just if the federal government writes checks, they never bounce. So that is effectively creation of more dollars. And if there are more dollars created, then the increase in the goods and services output of the economy, then you have inflation. Again, velocity of money held constant. This is very basic. This is not like super complicated. And if the government could just issue massive amounts of money and have and deficits didn't matter, then why don't we just make the deficit 100 times bigger? Okay, the answer is you can't, because it will basically turn the dollar into something that is worthless. So. And various countries have tried this experiment multiple times. It's not like, oh, I wonder what happens if this is done.
Yeah.
Have you seen Venezuela? Like the poor people of Venezuela have been just run roughshod by their government, and so obviously you can't simply create money. The true economy is very important. Like the true economy is the output of goods and services. It's not money. It's literally what is the output of goods and services. Money is simply a way for us to, or anything that you call money, is a way for us to conveniently exchange goods and services without having to engage in barter, and also to shift obligations in time. Those are the two reasons that you have money. This thing called money. It's really a database. Money is an information system for labor allocation and for exchange of goods and services and for translating in time. And the quality of that information is a function of, it's like you can apply information theory to money. And I think it helps explain why one money system is, or why one action is better than another. And so if like you just like an internet connection, you'd want something that's high bandwidth, low latency and jitter, and is not dropping packets, does not have a lot of errors in the system. And the same is true of money. You want, and really, like you said, what did PayPal really do? That it helped improve the bandwidth, the speed at which money could move. Instead of mailing checks back and forth, which amazingly that was what people did in 2000. You could now do real-time exchange of money, and now you could ship your goods immediately instead of mailing a check and waiting for the bank to clear the check. So, the ultimate thing that with PayPal, or if it sort of was in the X.com, sort of went more less sort of niche payments and more sort of broad financial, would be to simply disintermediate all the heterogeneous COBOL databases out there running on mainframes doing batch processing, and have a single real-time system that was secure and not batch processing, and so. It would just be, from an information standpoint, more efficient, and eventually it would, all the batch processing COBOL mainframes operated by the banks would cease to exist.
You've spent more time and built more in China than almost anybody. I mean, Apple would be the only company I could think of that's probably got a bigger footprint, but I'm not certain of that. What have you learned about China that you didn't know before you opened the factories there and started delivering cars there? And what should we know about China, as Americans? How should we think about China and our relationship with it? Because we haven't spent time there.
Sure. Well, I'd say like China, first of all, is not monolithic. It's not like everything is not some plot by the Chinese government. There are many factions within China that compete vigorously within China, and perhaps most important is that there's just a tremendous number of hardworking, smart people in China who want to get ahead and get things done. And they're not complacent, and they're not entitled, and they want to get things done, and they want to make a better life for themselves. And what we're going to see with China for the first time that anyone can remember who is alive is an economy that is twice the size of the U.S., possibly 3 times the size of the U.S. And it's going to be very weird living in that world. So we better stop the infighting in the U.S. and stop punching ourselves in the face, because like there's way too much of America punching itself in the damn face. It's just dumb. And think about like, hey, we got to be competitive here. And there's a new kid on the block that's going to be 2 to 3 times our size. We better step up our game, and stop infighting.
You think it's easier to stop infighting once we're beaten, or do you think that there's a way folks here can actually just get their political and commercial act together? Or does it not happen until we realize we've lost?
Or do we need a war?
I sure hope we don't need a war. But there will be certainly an economic competition that I think will blow people away. And when they realize just how competitive they have to be competitive with companies in China. It's very difficult. Tesla is competitive, but Tesla is competitive because we have an awesome team in China that,
Like, do your Tesla China employees work some meaningful percentage more or harder than your Tesla non-China employees? Do you find like it's 2 different companies, basically?
Well, I mean, I think Tesla is somewhat... Tesla is sort of pretty far out there in terms of work ethic anywhere in the world. So the Tesla work ethic in the U.S., I think, is substantially greater than any other car company or any large manufacturing company that I'm aware of. Tesla does have a strong work ethic in the U.S. But to be totally frank, that work ethic is exceeded on balance by the Tesla China team. That is, I think, objectively true. So that's not to say there aren't lots of hardworking people at Tesla US. There certainly are. But if you say on average, the work ethic in China is higher. It's just
tell us
calling it like it is, So
what about if you're an American CEO? How do you deal with, do you think, just the need for managing all these political factions inside of a company? You probably saw, all the Sturm und Drang related to Disney and what happened to them and what's continuing to happen to them on both sides between their employees as well as the governments, et cetera. Do you have any advice, or what do you tell like young CEOs that you hang out with about how to deal with that, how to make those decisions, where you land in the spectrum of dealing with all of this stuff? The non-work issues that are related to now, going to work every day.
I'm not sure I entirely understand what you mean. Like,
whether it's the need for political correctness or the need for having political points of view and having to bring that and balance that in the workplace. How do you deal with that? How do you give advice to other folks about having to deal with it?
Look, I think the point of a company is to produce useful products and services for your fellow human beings. It is not, some political gathering place or a thing where that's the point of the company. There was no intellectual property. There was no prototype. There was no nothing.
Yeah.
To be crystal fucking clear.
And it almost bankrupted you. I mean, that sent you to the cliff of insolvency.
Yeah.
I mean, that was...
Yes, we were on the ragged edge of bankruptcy so many times it was ridiculous. So, and 2008 was one of the worst years where basically GM and Ford, so GM and Chrysler went bankrupt. Ford almost went bankrupt, and trying to raise money for a startup electric car company in 2008 while GM was going bankrupt was difficult to say the least. People were angry that I even asked them for money. They're like, "Fuck you," and hang up. So the only way that Tesla actually made it through 2008 was a subset of the existing investors, which includes like people like Antonio Gracias and Steve Jobson and a few other key people, Ira Ehrenpreis, who I hold a debt of gratitude to this day. And I put in all the money I had left, and they said everything, literally everything. I didn't even have a house, so this is my ex-wife at the house. So I was like staying actually in Jeff Skull's spare bedroom. But there was the subset of the investors would say, okay, if they'll put in as much as I put in, so I put in everything, and then we closed that round at 6 p.m. Christmas Eve 2008. It was the last hour of the last day that it was possible, because after that, people were like kept breaking for the holidays, and we would have bounced payroll 2 days after Christmas.
It was pretty.
That's doorstep.
I mean, it was an incredible moment in time, and people also forget at the time that the first 2 rockets SpaceX sent up didn't exactly make it to orbit. Like one of them spun out. Yeah, the first 3. And I remember having dinner with you at that time, and I asked you, "Hey, how's it going? I heard Gawker says you got 4 weeks of payroll left." And you said, "That's not true." And I said, "Thank God." And you said, "We have 2." And I said,
no, I mean, both SpaceX and Tesla in 2008, if we'd simply paid our suppliers on time, we would have gone bankrupt immediately.
Tell us actually.
It was a pretty crazy moment in time, because I also remember asking you we were having dinner at BOA, and I said, well certainly there's got to be some good news. And you took out your BlackBerry to date the conversation. I don't remember it.
Oh, yeah.
And you said, "Don't tell anybody, Jake." I said, "No problem." And you showed me the clay version of the Model S.
Yeah.
The most beautiful car I'd ever seen. And I said, "Oh my God, it's stunning. How much is it going to cost?" You said, "I think I can make it for $50,000. I remember it was yesterday. I said, "If you make that car for $50,000, you'll change the fucking world." And you did it. And it
was a little more than 50,000, but
yeah, you did.
Let's ask about SpaceX.
Okay, well, that's about SpaceX, but I want to ask one more personal question. Has life gotten easier for you as these companies have hit scale, or has the complexity made life even more challenging? Because those early days, it was just fighting to survive. Nobody knew who you were anonymous, and it was really just about the work. And now, let's face it, you're the world's most famous guy, and everybody's watching everything you do, but these companies are also very big. So what's life like for you today? Are you enjoying what you're doing every day?
Well, I mean, it's somewhat of a roller coaster. So there are like good days and bad days, and there are also crisis issues. And, like sort of, knock on wood, like we're not like facing, death in the face. Like it's definitely like quite stressful when like, death is like trying to eat your face off, and like the foam is like, just getting, and like, right there, it's pretty stressful in that situation. So like, right, both SpaceX and Tesla have, significant cash reserves. So like, it's not we're staring death in the face. We can sort of see it over in the horizon, so I don't want to get complacent or entitled, because but it's not like just sort of foaming at the mouth, gnashing, trying to eat your face off on a daily basis. That's certainly, we've moved on from that point, and hopefully never return. But there are a lot of issues that need to be. It's just like if you're a CEO of a company, the chore level is high, and if you don't do your chores, then the company goes to hell. And I hate doing chores, frankly. So who does? So that's the real. Like, there's a whole bunch of sort of personnel issues and legal issues and things that I don't find enjoyable to work on. But if I don't work on them, the company suffers. So it's more like just the sheer volume of work is insane.